On a distant moon, above the swirling storms of a giant planet, an auction begins where the most fearsome dragons of the galaxy are sold to the highest bidder. But in the shadows of this crowded dome sits a broken creature no one wants, a dragon with twisted wings and eyes filled with sorrow. When a single human steps forward and makes an impossible choice, everything changes, and a story of courage, sacrifice, and an unshakable bond begins. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The auction dome on Halora Ring pulsed with restless energy, a place where wealth and ambition collided under the glow of artificial stars. It was built above the violet storms of Dranos V, a gas giant that never slept. Traders, collectors, and contractors from every corner of the galaxy filled the vast chamber. Their voices hummed through neural translators, creating a strange chorus of overlapping languages. Lena Merrick adjusted her breathing mask as she stepped inside. The recycled air carried a sharp tang, a mixture of burnt metal and bitter spice that made her throat ache. She had been here before, but every visit brought the same knot in her stomach. This was not a place for kindness. It was a place where life was bought and sold. To her right, towering display fields held massive thunder drakes bred for battle. Each creature stood tall and proud, their scales glittering like living armor. To her left, shadow gliders hissed and slashed at their containment walls, wingspans stretching wider than a shuttle. Bidders pressed forward eagerly, their eyes glowing with the desire for power and profit. "Stay focused," Corin Hale muttered beside her. He was tall, lean, and all business, his hand tugging at her sleeve as if she might wander off. "We're here for lot 78. Not for sightseeing." His voice carried the steady rhythm of a man used to calculating risk. Lena nodded, though her eyes swept the crowd with quiet unease. The breeding stock they sought was important for their farm back on Halora Moon. Racing dragons could save their struggling business, and Corin reminded her of that fact often. Still, she couldn't shake the sense that today held something different. The auctioneer, a towering figure with scaled skin that shimmered in shades of violet, raised all four of his arms to demand silence. His voice boomed through the amplifiers. "Lot number 32, a juvenile drake, male, approximately 4 cycles old. Opening bid, 60 credits. Lena's attention sharpened at once. Tucked away in the far corner of the dome, a smaller containment field flickered to life. Inside stood a dragon unlike the others. He was no larger than a farm dog, his scales pale and pearlescent, almost translucent under the harsh light. His wings, however, were twisted and bent, drooping at unnatural angles like torn cloth in the wind. Murmurs rippled through the audience. A buyer laughed openly. 60 credits for that wreck? I'd pay you to haul it away." Another voice joined in. "Defective, worthless, can't even stand proud." Lena froze. Unlike the others who growled or roared, this little creature simply sat in silence. His tail curled close to his body. His eyes lifted, meeting hers across the space. They were deep blue, darker than any ocean she had seen, flecked with gold that shimmered like sunlight breaking through water. Her breath caught. There was no fire, no aggression, only a quiet weight of sorrow. In that gaze, she felt something raw, something unspoken. It was resignation, the kind that comes when even hope has slipped away. Corin tugged at her arm again. "Don't, Lena. We can't waste money on that one. We need breeders, racers, strong wings. This is nothing. But she didn't hear him. She stepped forward, ... weaving through the crowd, until she stood at the edge of the containment field. The small dragon turned his head, his broken wings dragging against the floor. She felt a tug in her chest that words could not explain. 60 credits, the auctioneer called. Silence followed. Buyers shifted, uninterested. No hands rose. Lena's pulse thundered. She tried to steady her voice, but it escaped before she could think. 100 credits. A hush fell over the dome. The auctioneer's 4 eyes blinked in surprise, then narrowed. 100 credits from the human female. Do I hear 150? Snickers rippled through the bidders. No one raised the price. The dragon was worthless to them, but not to her. Sold, the auctioneer declared. Lot 32 to the human. Corin's face flushed with disbelief. What are you doing? He whispered fiercely as they turned toward the payment terminal. You just threw away hard-earned credits on a crippled hatchling. This will ruin. Lena pressed her hand to the terminal, her credit chip registering the transfer. She did not flinch. His name is Ember, she said quietly, though she had not thought of the name until the words formed on her lips. It simply felt right. And he's coming home with us. You've named it already, Corin scoffed. Ember cannot even fly. The guild will laugh us out of business. Lena kept her eyes on the small figure, being prepared for release from the containment field. Handlers moved with practiced efficiency, sliding open a transfer cage. The pale dragon hesitated, trembling as though each step cost him strength. Lena knelt low. Her voice softened, steady as a promise. Come on, little one, it's safe. Slowly, Ember moved. His back legs pushed forward, while his front legs shook with effort. His wings dragged, scraping the floor with a faint metallic rasp. The journey of only a few steps felt endless. Every eye in the dome turned away, unimpressed. But Lena counted each movement, holding her breath until Ember finally crossed the gap and entered the cage. He lowered his head, exhausted, and curled in tight silence. Lena rose to her feet, heart heavy but firm with resolve. She knew the road ahead would not be simple. Yet something inside told her that Ember was more than he seemed. And in that crowded auction dome, surrounded by laughter and doubt, Lena felt a quiet certainty. This was not the end of Ember's story. It was only the beginning. The journey from Halora Ring back to Valora Moon took nearly 3 hours. Inside the cargo hold of their transport, Lena sat near the transfer cage, her eyes fixed on the small dragon curled within. Ember had not touched the dried fish she placed beside him. Instead, he lay still, his twisted wings folded around his body like broken shields. Every few minutes, his tail gave a faint twitch, but otherwise, he remained silent. Corin piloted with sharp movements, his frustration filling the silence. You've doomed us, he muttered more than once. We needed breeding stock, not a dragon who will never fly. His words echoed off the steel walls, but Lena did not argue. Her gaze stayed on Ember. When they landed at the edge of their farm, twilight was spreading across the terraform plains. One side of the horizon glowed with the native purple grasslands, while the other stretched into bright green meadows planted by settlers. The barn loomed ahead, a place built to house powerful dragons bred for racing circuits. Tonight, however, it would not welcome Ember. As Corin unloaded the crates, he turned to her sharply. You're not putting him in with the others. They'll kill him before dawn. I know, Lena replied calmly. He goes to the medical bay. The medical bay was smaller, but well equipped. When she inherited the facility from her uncle, she had invested heavily in diagnostic technology. She believed that only healthy dragons brought success. Now, for the first time, she wondered if that equipment could do more than serve profit. She guided Ember's cage into the sterile room. The pale dragon pressed himself against the far corner, eyes wide, as though waiting for harm to come. Lena crouched low, her tone soft. "It's all right. You're safe here." With a simple command, the room's computer activated a scan. A wash of blue light moved over Ember's body. He whimpered faintly, the first sound she had heard him make since the auction. The holographic display filled with details: bone structures, muscle fibers, organ function. Lena's heart sank as the results scrolled past. His wings were not just twisted. The bones had grown at unnatural angles, knotted and fused. The computer calculated the chance of natural flight at less than 1%. No surgical method could correct it without risking total paralysis. But then another reading appeared. The neural activity in brain spiked unusually high, concentrated in the region tied to reasoning and emotion. Dragons were intelligent creatures, but never like this. His patterns resembled the complexity of human cognition. Lena whispered, almost to herself, "You know what's happening to you, don't you?" Ember lifted his head slowly. His ocean blue eyes met hers, and for the briefest moment, it felt as if he truly understood. Time passed quietly. Corin refused to step into the room, muttering about wasted credits and foolish dreams. Lena ignored him. She brought Hukat inside that night, unwilling to leave Ember alone. As the hours crept by, the small dragon remained curled against the wall, wings trembling whenever he shifted. At midnight, she stirred from half-sleep and noticed Ember moving. He pushed himself across the floor, dragging his wings heavily. Each step was labored, but he kept going until after many minutes he reached her side. He lowered his head onto her lap with a weary sig. Lena froze, scarcely breathing. Dragons did not do this. They might accept human presence after years of care, but never this quickly, never this completely. She reached out with careful fingers and touched his scales. They were warm, softer than she expected, and carried a faint scent of ash and cinnamon. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered, voice breaking into the silence. For the first time, Ember closed his eyes, his body relaxing, as though he finally believed her. The next morning, the farm stirred with routine. Workers tended to the stronger dragons, feeding them and preparing them for training. Laughter drifted from the barns, mocking the idea that Lena had spent real credits on a creature so broken. Corin joined in their doubt, shaking his head every time he glanced at the medical bay. But Lena stayed close to Ember. She offered food again, small portions of dried fish, bits of roasted grain. At first he turned away, wary. Then, with slow reluctance, he took a single bite. His jaw worked carefully, as if unused to trust. Each day, the bond grew. Ember followed her with his eyes, tilting his head as though studying her every word. His gaze held a depth that unsettled her at times, a silent intelligence that seemed far older than his fragile body. Yet there was one moment that broke her heart more than any other. One night, when the moons of Dranos lit the sky, she woke to find Ember standing near the window. His twisted wings quivered as he tried to stretch them, straining against their broken form. Outside, other dragons soared effortlessly across the starlit sky, their silhouettes graceful against the glow. Ember's eyes followed them with desperate longing. Tears lined his scales. Dragons were not supposed to cry. Lena stepped to his side, her voice soft as the wind outside. "You want to fly, don't you?" Ember turned to her, and then, with a slow and deliberate motion, he nodded. The realization struck her with the weight of a promise. This dragon understood. His heart held the same dream as hers, even if the world called it impossible. Lena looked back at the medical display, at the endless list of failures and impossibilities. Still, her resolve hardened. Ember might never fly in the way others did, but she would not let that longing go unanswered. The fragile bond between them had already begun to reshape both their lives. And as dawn touched the horizon, Lena whispered again, more firmly this time, "You are not broken, Ember. You are more than they can see." The nights on Valora Moon were long and painted in silver light from its twin suns hidden beyond the horizon. Lena spent most of those nights in the medical bay, her eyes fixed on glowing screens filled with endless data. Every scan reminded her that Ember's wings would never carry him into the sky. The bones were twisted like roots strangling themselves, and no surgery existed that could untangle them. But Ember did not stop trying. When he thought she was asleep, he dragged himself to the window. His wings shook with effort as he tried to stretch them. His gaze followed the racing dragons soaring overhead, each one graceful against the backdrop of stars. Tears slid along his scaled cheeks, silent proof of a longing no words could describe. Lena began to feel his pain as if it were her own. It wasn't just about keeping him alive anymore. It wasn't even about saving her farm or proving Corin wrong. Ember wanted to fly, and she could not ignore that dream. "Computer," she said one evening, her voice tired yet steady, "show me wing anatomy again. Highlight muscle strength." The hologram rotated before her. The muscles were intact, some even stronger than she expected. The problem was the bones, locked in angles that trapped the membranes. Her eyes lingered on the figures, searching for any loophole. "Surgical correction, Riz," she ordered. The system responded without emotion. 94% chance of permanent paralysis. She shut her eyes. Too dangerous, too cruel. Still, Ember's eyes haunted her. Every time she saw that ocean blue filled with gold flecks, she knew giving up was not an option. The following day, she traveled to the outer edge of the settlement, where old workshops clung to the rocky cliffs. Inside one of them lived Jorik Talon, an engineer who had once worked on experimental flight gear for injured creatures. Most called him eccentric, even reckless, but Lena trusted his mind. The workshop smelled of oil, dust, and metal. Pieces of half-built machines hung from every corner. Jorik himself, hunched over a table, barely looked up when she entered. "You've come about that dragon," he muttered, as though already knowing. "His name is Ember," Lena corrected gently. "And yes, I need your help." He finally raised his head, eyes sharp beneath the grime of years. "I don't build miracles, Lena. Bones twisted like his are a curse no engineer can undo." "I don't want a miracle," she replied. "I want a chance, a way for him to feel the wind, even if it's not the same as the others." Jorik studied her, then exhaled heavily. "I once designed adaptive frames, mechanical wings to support broken ones. They were unstable, dangerous. Most clients refused to test them. Too costly, too risky." "Show me," Lena urged. He hesitated, then opened a storage chest. Inside lay delicate frames of lightweight alloy, shaped like skeletal wings. Fine strands of synthetic fiber stretched across them like membranes. They looked fragile, but she could see the care behind every line. "They work with muscle tension," Jorik explained. "The dragon moves what little he can, and the frame amplifies it. But one wrong strain, one imbalance, and the system collapses. Then we'll make it stronger, she said firmly. We'll make it his. For weeks they worked too. Jorik adjusted the design, reshaping the frame to match Ember's warped bones. Lena tested weight distribution, studied every scan, and argued against cutting corners. Corin shook his head whenever he passed by, muttering that she was chasing illusions. But Lena no longer listened to him. Inside the medical bay, Ember watched every step. His eyes followed the frames as if he understood. He allowed her to measure his wings, though every touch made him flinch at first. Slowly, trust grew deeper. When the first prototype was ready, he sniffed it with cautious curiosity. The day of fitting was tense. Lena knelt beside him, voice soft and steady. "This won't hurt, Ember. It's just to help you move." She secured the alloy frame around his shoulders, adjusting the straps with care. Ember tensed, his muscles trembling as the weight settled. Then, slowly, he moved. The mechanical wings responded, lifting slightly, stretching wider than his twisted bones alone could manage. His eyes widened with something close to wonder. Lena's throat tightened. "You see? It works!" But Jorik shook his head. "Not yet. Movement is one thing. Flight is another. Don't give him hope too soon." Still, Ember kept testing. Each night, while Lena watched, he practiced small movements. The wings flexed, adjusted, and held their form. It was not graceful, but it was effort. And for the first time, Ember's eyes carried a spark brighter than sorrow. One evening, after hours of practice, Ember turned to her and nudged her hand with his nose. He lowered his head and let out a sound between a sigh and a whisper, soft and steady. "You want to try," Lena said quietly. He nodded again. Her heart pounded. He was ready for more. Yet fear weighed heavily on her chest. The cliffside winds of Valora were not forgiving. One mistake could break him entirely. But could she deny him the chance? She looked at Ember, then at the stars beyond the window. "Soon," she whispered. "We'll try soon." The impossible dream was no longer just his. It had become hers too. And she knew the day was coming when Ember would step to the edge of the cliff, frame on his back, and dare to reach the sky. The dawn came slowly over Valora Moon, painting the sky in soft hues of gold and violet. The fields below shimmered with dew, and the cliffs that overlooked the meadows glowed in the first light. It was here, at the edge of the world, that Lena stood with Ember by her side. The alloy frame had been refined over weeks of endless adjustments. Every strap had been tested, every joint strengthened. Ember had grown used to its weight, moving with more ease each day. But today was not about practice. Today was about flight. Corin stood behind them, arms crossed, his expression caught between worry and disbelief. "This is madness," he muttered. "If he falls, he won't get back up." "If he doesn't try," Lena answered, her eyes never leaving Ember. "He'll never know what he could have been." The small dragon stood at the cliff's edge, his twisted wings bound within the shining frame. The wind tugged at him, rustling the synthetic membranes like sails. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, where other dragons circled gracefully, their wings cutting across the sky in effortless arcs. Lena knelt beside him, her hand resting gently against his neck. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready," she whispered. Ember looked at her, his deep blue eyes flecked with gold. There was no fear in them now, only determination. He gave a slow nod. The world seemed to fall silent. Even Corin stopped speaking, his doubts swallowed by the weight of the moment. Ember took a step forward. His legs trembled, but he did not falter. Another step and another. Then, with a final push, he leapt into the open air. The wind caught him instantly. The alloy frame spread wide, supporting the twisted bones beneath. For a heartbeat, he faltered. Dipping downward, Lena's breath caught in her chest. But then, with a surge of strength, Ember pushed his muscles against the frame. The wings snapped open, catching the rising currents. Suddenly, he was not falling. He was soaring. The crowd that had gathered near the barn gasped in unison. Workers who had mocked him days before now watched in stunned silence as Ember circled above the meadows. The alloy wings shimmered in the sunlight, each movement clumsy but powerful. It was not graceful, not perfect, but it was flight. Lena felt tears blur her vision as she followed his path across the sky. "You did it," she whispered. "You're free." Ember turned, circling lower, his eyes finding hers even from above. In that gaze was gratitude, fierce and unbroken. He soared higher, testing the currents, his body adjusting with each movement. The twisted wings beneath the frame no longer defined him. The world that once mocked him now lay open before him. Every flap, every glide, ... was proof that hope could be stronger than limitation. Corin let out a long breath. His disbelief had melted into awe. "I'll be damned," he murmured. "He's actually flying." Minutes passed like hours as Ember circled the cliffs. Finally, with a tired but steady glide, he descended toward the ground. Lena stepped forward, arms trembling, ready to catch him if she had to. Ember landed clumsily, stumbling once before finding his balance. The wings folded back with a soft hum. Resting against his sides, his chest heaved with exhaustion, but his eyes shone brighter than the rising sun. Lena dropped to her knees beside him. Her hand brushed against his scales, and her voice broke with emotion. "You're not broken, Ember. You never were." The dragon lowered his head, pressing it gently against her shoulder. It was a gesture of trust, of unity, of victory shared between two beings who had refused to surrender. Behind them, the onlookers whispered among themselves. What once had been mockery had turned to quiet respect. They had seen something no one believed possible, a dragon who should never have flown, finding the sky through sheer will and the bond of one who believed in him. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the cliffs, Lena knew their lives would never be the same. Ember had proven more than strength. He had shown that dreams were not measured by perfection, but by the courage to chase them. She looked out at the horizon, where the sky stretched wide and endless. "This is only the beginning," she said softly, more to Ember than to herself. The dragon lifted his head, his eyes still locked on the heavens. For the first time, he did not look with longing or sorrow. He looked with certainty. The bond between them was no longer fragile. It was unshakable, forged in trust, in pain, and in triumph. Ember had taken the leap, and together they had rewritten what was possible. As the scene faded into quiet, the message was clear. Every broken wing still carries the hope of flight.